Hey guys, it's Ellie. Welcome back to Bite-Sized Book of Mormon. I'm glad to have you with me. So, if you've never been here before, this is just a podcast where we read through one chapter of the Book of Mormon each episode, and to give a little bit of context, a little bit of insight, a little bit of good times, so stick around. So, if you remember last episode, we read Helaman chapter 5, which is very famous mostly for its 12th verse, which is basically the sons of Helaman, Nephi and Lehi, kind of paraphrasing what he told them when he was still alive. And he talks about, building your foundation on Christ. And if you do that, then once the shafts and the whirlwinds of Satan comes, then, you will be protected, you will be strong, and your testimony will stand forever. And it's an amazing verse. But what I liked better, honestly, about the chapter was the second half, which is a whole miracle of Nephi and Lehi basically preaching to a bunch of Lamanites in the prison where they were about to be killed. And these Lamanites are like lifelong converts because God himself speaks to these people and he teaches them, which is the coolest thing ever. And so if you want to listen to that, go back and listen to that chapter if you haven't already. But yeah, I think without further ado, let's see what Nephi and Lehi continue to do in Helaman chapter 6. And it came to pass that when the 62nd year of the reign of the judges had ended, all these things had happened, and the Lamanites had become, the more part of them, a righteous people, insomuch that their righteousness did exceed that of the Nephites, because of their firmness and their steadiness in the faith. For behold, there were many of the Nephites who had become hardened and impenitent and grossly wicked, insomuch that they did reject the word of God and all the preaching and prophesying which did come among them. Nevertheless, the people of the church did have great joy because of the conversion of the Lamanites, yea, because of the church of God which had been established among them, and they did fellowship one with another, and did rejoice one with another, and did have great joy. So early on in the chapter, we already have basically what the chapter is gonna be. We're kind of getting a view into how things are going to end up. We're basically reading how the Lamanites, by and large, are doing really well. They're really righteous. Nephi and Lehi, the miracle that they did last chapter, and the 8,000 Lamanites that they converted in the city of Zarahemla, that was like a chunk of the Lamanites that they got. And now they're like really righteous and really steady in the faith. Meanwhile, a lot of the Nephites are struggling, and some of them are actually described as, quote, grossly wicked, which is bad. So anyways, we're kind of seeing the status quo flip-flop, where usually, Nephite's good, Lamanite's bad, that's kind of the default. It's flipping in this chapter. We're seeing the Nephites kind of slipping and descending into wickedness, and the Lamanites rising up out of their traditions of their fathers and having strong and steady faith in God. So yeah, this is the chapter of status quo flips. And it came to pass that many of the Lamanites did come down into the land of Zarahemla, and did declare unto the people of the Nephites the manner of their conversion, and did exhort them to faith and repentance. Yea, and many did preach with exceedingly great power and authority, unto the bringing down many of them into the depths of humility, to be the humble followers of God and the Lamb. And it came to pass that many of the Lamanites did go into the land northward, and also Nephi and Lehi went into the land northward to preach unto the people, and thus ended the 63rd year. And behold, there was peace in all the land, insomuch that the Nephites did go into whatsoever part of the land they would, whether among the Nephites or the Lamanites. And it came to pass that the Lamanites did also go whithersoever they would, whether it were among the Lamanites or among the Nephites, and thus they did have free intercourse one with another, to buy and to sell, and to get gain according to their desire. And it came to pass that they became exceedingly rich, both the Lamanites and the Nephites, and they did have an exceeding plenty of gold, and of silver, and of all manner of precious metals, both in the land south and in the land north. Now the land south was called Lehi, and the land north was called Mulek, which was after the son of Zedekiah. For the Lord did bring Mulek into the land north, and Lehi into the land south. And behold, there was all manner of gold in both these lands, and of silver, and of precious ore of every kind. And there were also curious workmen, who did work all kinds of ore, and did refine it, and thus they did become rich. They did raise grain in abundance, both in the north and in the south, and they did flourish exceedingly, both in the north and in the south. And they did multiply and wax exceedingly strong in the land, and they did raise many flocks and herds, yea, many fatlings. Behold, their women did toil and spin, and did make all manner of cloth, of fine twined linen, and cloth of every kind, to clothe their nakedness. And thus the 64th year did pass away in peace. And in the 65th year they did also have great joy and peace, yea, much preaching and many prophecies concerning that which was to come, and thus passed away the 65th year. So this is a really interesting state of affairs between the Nephites and the Lamanites. As I said earlier, the Nephites are kind of slipping into wickedness and the Lamanites are kind of doing great. And so, because of that, there's not really any war, because usually it was the Lamanites that would start all these wars. And so now there's peace, and so now they can just kind of like freely go wherever they want and live among the other people. And yeah, no, Lamanites can go live among the Nephites or the Lamanites and vice versa. Like, there seems to be free movement of people and of goods for like the first time in probably centuries, which is sick. Like, this is really cool. And of course, the Nephites still aren't doing well spiritually, but it's just kind of an interesting status quo shift that kind of seems to be the theme of this chapter, is that things are changing. Things have never really been this way for the Nephites. And also, I think it's interesting that once they start kind of cooperatively working and kind of opening up trade and production between the two nations, there's mutual prosperity. Like, they should have done this so long ago, because now they're both doing better. Like, having peace is mutually beneficial. It is not just a political thing, it is an economic thing almost. Like, they could have just been doing better, but instead they chose violence and chose their eternal dispute above this mutually beneficial relationship that they could have been having all along. And also in this section, it kind of offhand mentions that the Lamanites were kind of going among the Nephites and talking about their conversion and talking about their faith and preaching, actually pretty powerfully, it sounds like. So yeah, even more status quo shifts. Now the Lamanites are coming among the Nephites to preach unto them. This is like the reverse of Alma the Younger and the Sons of Mosiah that went among the Lamanites for multiple years. Yeah, no, now there's Lamanites coming and hanging out with the Nephites and preaching them about God, which is, I don't know, it's just kind of wild. And it came to pass that in the 66th year of the reign of the judges, behold, Cezoram was murdered by an unknown hand as he sat upon the judgment seat. And it came to pass that in the same year that his son, who had been appointed by the people in his stead, was also murdered. And thus ended the 66th year. And in the commencement of the 67th year, the people began to grow exceedingly wicked again. For behold, the Lord had blessed them so long with the riches of the world that they had not been stirred up to anger, to wars, nor to bloodshed. Therefore, they began to set their hearts upon their riches. Yea, they began to seek to get gain, that they might be lifted up one above another. Therefore, they began to commit secret murders, and to rob and to plunder, that they might get gain. And now, behold, those murderers and plunderers were a band who had been formed by Kishkumen and Gadianton. And now it had come to pass that there were many, even among the Nephites, of Gadianton's band. But behold, they were more numerous among the more wicked part of the Lamanites, and they were called Gadianton's robbers and murderers. And it was they who did murder the chief judge Cezoram and his son while in the judgment seat, and behold, they were not found. And now it came to pass that when the Lamanites found that there were robbers among them, they were exceedingly sorrowful, and they did use every means in their power to destroy them off the face of the earth. But behold, Satan did stir up the hearts of the more part of the Nephites, insomuch that they did unite with these bands of robbers, and did enter into their covenants and their oaths, that they would protect and preserve one another in whatsoever difficult circumstances they should be placed, that they should not suffer for their murders and their plunderings and their stealings. So 2 chief judges in a row are murdered. And what do the Nephite people ultimately do? Ally themselves to the murderers and join in on their covenants. Oh my gosh. So if you remember, like, chapters ago, the Gadianton robbers was formed. So it has been around for years, and it was dormant for multiple of those years, or at least it was kind of laying low for a while. But now it has come back into the limelight. Originally, the band was formed when Kishkumen killed the chief judge Pahoran, and now it's back. And they're doing murders again. They're even murdering chief judges again. Yippee! So, yeah, if you remember a couple of chapters ago when it said that Gadianton and his band would be the reason for the ultimate Nephite downfall, it's kind of coming back a little bit. It's not this specific band of people that are going to kill all of the Nephites, because that's not going to happen for another, 450 years, but it is his ideas that ultimately bring them all down. The idea of the secret combination of prideful people that think they're above some sort of law. So, anyways, they're back. This is fascinating. And it talks about how they're back kind of because the Nephites had been prospered for so long and they didn't have any wars to worry about, that because of all this spare time they suddenly had, they started focusing and placing more value on their stuff, right? Their pride. And so now they are trying to gain and kind of get above one another. They're starting to treat life like it's a zero-sum game. Like if that person has a lot, then I also can't have a lot, so I need to take them down so I can be above them. That is a bad way to view the world. Don't do that, by the way. But yeah, so now Gadianton and his robbers are kind of cashing in on that mindset. Like, they've been around for a while, they've been murdering for a while, but now kind of the general Nephite vibes are coming back in their favor. And once they find out that it was the Gadianton robbers that killed 2 chief judges in a row, like I said, they ally with them. Oh my gosh, if that is not a sign of how sick the Nephite people are at this point, I don't know what is. And it came to pass that they did have their signs, yea, their secret signs, and their secret words, and this that they might distinguish a brother who had entered into the covenant, that whatsoever wickedness his brother should do, he should not be injured by his brother, nor by those who did belong to his band, who had taken this covenant. And thus they might murder and plunder and steal, and commit whoredoms and all manner of wickedness, contrary to the laws of their country, and also the laws of their God. And whosoever of those who belonged to their band should reveal unto the world of their wickedness and their abominations should be tried, not according to the laws of their country, but according to the laws of their wickedness, which had been given by Gadianton and Kishkumen. Now behold, it is these secret oaths and covenants which Alma commanded his son should not go forth unto the world, lest they should be a means of bringing down the people unto destruction. Now behold, those secret oaths and covenants did not come forth unto Gadianton from the records which were delivered unto Helaman, but behold, they were put into the heart of Gadianton by that same being who did entice our first parents to partake of the forbidden fruit. Yea, that same being who did plot with Cain, that if he would murder his brother Abel, it should not be known unto the world, and he did plot with Cain and his followers from that time forth. And also it is that same being who put it into the hearts of the people to build a tower sufficiently high that they might get to heaven. And it was that same being who led on the people who came from that tower into this land, who spread the works of darkness and abominations over all the face of the land, until he dragged the people down to an entire destruction and to an everlasting hell. Yea, it is that same being who put it into the heart of Gadianton to still carry on the work of darkness and of secret murder, and he has brought it forth from the beginning of man even down to this time. And behold, it is he who is the author of all sin. And behold, he doth carry on his works of darkness and secret murder, and doth hand down their plots, and their oaths, and their covenants, and their plans of awful wickedness from generation to generation, according as he can get hold upon the hearts of the children of men. So we are talking about the satanic influence of the Gadianton robbers, which at least Mormon, who is, abridging this record, seems to think that it is the most literal, like Satan put these covenants into Gadianton's mind. And I think it's interesting to note that in verse 22, it talks about secret signs and words that people can use to distinguish who is and isn't a Gadianton robber. That is kind of a profane mirror of what we have in the temple. Satan really likes to do that, where he likes to take the truth that is real and kind of flip it on its head, or kind of corrupt it in a important and foundational way. So yeah, Satan bad. I don't know what else to say. Satan is bad, and yeah, Gadianton and his robbers are kind of the Nephite equivalent of Cain and Abel, the just default bad influence. There is nothing good about them or what they stand for. And I also think it's just kind of cool how Mormon, I assume it's Mormon at least, kind of inserts into this book some biblical examples, which is very fun. It talks about Cain and Abel, it talks about the forbidden fruit of Adam and Eve, and it talks about the Tower of Babel, which actually is the same people as in the Book of Ether in this very record that we're reading, how it talks about how the people from the Tower of Babel went to the Americas and then spread darkness and abomination over all the land. So basically, if you don't know, the Book of Ether is near the end of this book, and it's actually a separate record of a separate people that also came to the Americas, and they're from the Tower of Babel, and they were really bad. Basically, the entire book is an abridged record of their civilization falling. Similar to how the Nephites do, but a lot quicker, because it's a lot more abridged. So yeah, it's kind of cool that Mormon is kind of mixing biblical and Book of Mormon era records here to describe Satan. It's just kind of a cool touch. And now behold, he had got great hold upon the hearts of the Nephites, yea, insomuch that they had become exceedingly wicked, yea, the more part of them had turned out of the way of righteousness, and did trample under their feet the commandments of God, and did turn unto their own ways, and did build up unto themselves idols of their gold and their silver. And it came to pass that all these iniquities did come unto them in the space of not many years, insomuch that a more part of it had come unto them in the 67th year of the reign of the judges over the people of Nephi. And they did grow in their iniquities in the 68th year also, to the great sorrow and lamentation of the righteous. And thus we see that the Nephites did begin to dwindle in unbelief and grow in wickedness and abominations, while the Lamanites began to grow exceedingly in the knowledge of their God, yea, and they did begin to keep his statutes and commandments, and to walk in truth and uprightness before him. And thus we see that the Spirit of the Lord began to withdraw from the Nephites because of the wickedness and the hardness of their hearts. And thus we see that the Lord began to pour out his Spirit on the Lamanites because of their easiness and willingness to believe in his words. And it came to pass that the Lamanites did hunt the band of robbers of Gadianton, and they did preach the word of God among the more wicked part of them, insomuch that this band of robbers was utterly destroyed from among the Lamanites. And it came to pass, on the other hand, that the Nephites did build them up and support them, beginning at the more wicked part of them until they had overspread all the land of the Nephites, and had seduced the more part of the righteous until they had come down to believe in their works and partake of their spoils, and join with them in their secret murders and combinations. And thus they did obtain the sole management of the government, insomuch that they did trample under their feet, and smite, and rend, and turn their backs upon the poor and the meek, and the humble followers of God. And thus we see that they were in an awful state, and ripening for an everlasting destruction. And it came to pass that thus ended the 68th year of the reign of the judges over the people of Nephi. Wow, so yeah, the Nephites really aren't doing well. This chapter happens over the course of 6 years, and it starts by the Nephites kind of slipping, kind of not doing super great, and it ends by them literally being taken over by the Gadianton robbers and having any righteous member just completely spit upon in the Nephites. Conversely, the Lamanites are doing great. They're actually sending missionaries among the Nephites. And what's interesting is when it kind of parallels how the Nephites and how the Lamanites treated the Gadianton robbers. Because clearly at some point there was some form of Gadianton robbers among the Lamanites, because it makes a point to say that they were no more among the Lamanites after they went and preached among them and put forth concerted effort to get rid of this movement. And that is what the Nephites could have done if they were still righteous. But they were wicked to the point where instead of rejecting and preaching among the Gadianton robbers to kind of get them to convert, they embrace them completely, to the point where they take over their government, like I said. So yeah, they're completely taken over by this very clearly satanic influence, because Mormon takes multiple verses in this chapter to describe that it is Satan that gave Gadianton these covenants to order and organize his brotherhood of murderers and plunderers. This is like a complete flip-flopping, where the Nephites used to be people of God, the Lamanites used to be ignorant people of not God, because like I said, they're ignorant, so it's not really their fault, but whatever. And now we're switching, where the Lamanites are people of God who are sending missionaries and keeping the commandments and being righteous, and the Nephites aren't even ignorant following the traditions of their fathers, they're like actively satanic. Oh my goodness. So yeah, they're like worse than the Lamanites ever were in some way. Anyways, yeah, this is not going super great for the Nephites. Yippee-ki-yay. So the standout verse for this chapter is going to be verse 34, which says, "And thus we see that the Nephites did begin to dwindle in unbelief and grow in wickedness and abominations, while the Lamanites began to grow exceedingly in the knowledge of their God, yea, and they did begin to keep his statutes and commandments, and to walk in truth and uprightness before him." So what I love about this chapter and the whole section where the Nephites are wicked is that it proves a point. And that point is that there's nothing intrinsically special about the Nephites that they were righteous. Yes, they had the records, and they ended up on the right side of some old debate between Nephi and Laman and Lemuel, but like, that was it. There was nothing intrinsic about them as people that made them God's people, besides the fact that they were righteous, and they actually followed his word. And so that's why it's not really surprising to me that Nephites can flip-flop like this. I've heard arguments against the Book of Mormon that people don't like it because it demonizes the darker-skinned Lamanites and idolizes the lighter-skinned Nephites. when in fact the Nephites constantly, when they're righteous, talk about the Lamanites as their brethren and wish that they could be closer and not fighting constantly. And there's this whole section near the end of the Book of Mormon where the Nephites are like the worst. They're awful. And the Lamanites are the ones that are actively sending missionaries to them, and they are the ones that are being righteous, that are standing uprightly before God, following his commandments, helping the poor, and preaching among themselves. So, might I repeat, there is nothing intrinsic to the Nephites that made them God's people. I just kind of think that's an important point, because that also means that there's nothing intrinsic about the Lamanites that made them wicked. It was just the traditions of their fathers and what they chose to believe. It wasn't anything about who they were as people. There was nothing stopping them from believing in God and changing their ways. And that applies to us as well. If we feel like we are like the Lamanites, we struggle, we sin, we fight when we don't have to, there is nothing intrinsic to us that will stop us from approaching God, that will stop us from rebuilding our life on his foundation. There is nothing in our way. And I just think that that's greatly inspiring, even though the Nephites are kind of going through it right now. So anyways, yeah, that is the episode for today. I hope you enjoyed. This is a really interesting episode because, like I said near the beginning, so much of the status quo is being completely flipped. So yeah, let's see how the chapters kind of continue after this because, well, things are different now. Like, things are really, really different now. So anyways, let's see how it goes. But yeah, I actually recently just started a Substack that I want to mention. It's basically where I post articles about the Book of Mormon, about specific chapters of the Book of Mormon, about insights that I like, that I kind of expand on from the podcast. And so you can subscribe, you can get that in your inbox, you can learn about 2 Nephi 4 and Alma 36, and coming up, Alma 5 as well. So yeah, look forward to that. But yeah, there's also a lot more links in my link tree. You can access the Book of Mormon to read it for yourself. You can contact me. You can find my Instagram and my YouTube where you should follow me. And yeah, ultimately, all in all, a good time. But that's all I've got for you today. I'll talk to you later. Bye.